Hello, everybody. This is Kevin again, your URC director, coming to you with another video in our video series for URC 2023 finals. Hope teams are busy with their final preparations. Tonight, we're going to be talking to you about the autonomous navigation mission. Certainly one of the newer and more challenging tests to URC. It's been a great opportunity to watch teams as they've been progressing with the state of autonomy that they're able to develop on their rovers. And we're really excited to see what teams are able to bring again this year. With me for this video, I'm going to welcome Darrel Robertson to the studio. Darrel, thanks for joining us tonight to talk through the autonomous navigation mission. All right, so I think the first thing we're going to do is spend a little bit of time talking about rules. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the rules here. All right. Over to the screen here. So, Darrel, just really quickly, what are the major tasks that teams have to accomplish in the autonomous navigation mission?
Okay, so the basic idea is to go from waypoint to waypoint and to have the rover do that autonomously without needing a human to drive it as it goes. We have it split into two main tasks. The first is GPS only. This is something that we found will definitely help teams in other missions and in general, is to have good, accurate GPS. So for the GPS only gates that are waypoints that we have up first, it's just a coordinate, and teams have to drive to that coordinate and get within about 2 or 3 meters of that waypoint. There may or may not be anything to actually see at that waypoint. Last year we did it with just a couple of rocks on the ground that there was no other way to tell that you were like at the correct point. And then moving on from that, we also have a test of finding some waypoints that have flags with augmented reality or AR tags on them, and for those the waypoint is not exactly at the GPS coordinates. So once they arrive at the given GPS coordinates, they have to start a search for the post with the AR tags on it. And then the last one of those, as you can kind of see on there, is actually a gate. So there's two posts with an AR tag on each side, and they have to drive through the gate. And this mission can be done either with the drone or with the rover. So this we've been slowly thinking about adding in some drone tasks, particularly given the success on Mars with the helicopter that they landed there recently. So we're allowing teams to use a drone for this mission, in addition to or instead of the rover.
All right. Now, for the teams that are implementing a drone, there's only a few of you. Really excited to see teams taking that big and bold risk there. Make sure that you're taking a close look at the drone requirements. One of the important things for those teams to really pay attention to is you are required to carry a dummy mass that is equivalent in mass to your battery on the drone. So you will need to make sure that your battery is removable, as well as that mass, make sure it's removable so that we can weigh those before you take flight and start this mission. Verify you've got that correctly configured on there. Now, Darrel, what was the purpose of the dummy or the dead weight that the drone has to carry?
Yeah, so gravity on Mars is lighter, so you get a little bit of easier performance from that. But conversely, the atmospheric pressure is much lower. So accounting for both of those effects, gosh, this was like 10 years ago, back when we were last actually using drones. We did a study of conceptual design of a drone with the same requirements, designing it for use on Mars and designing it for use on Earth, and then looked at different penalties that we could apply to basically get the same performance from optimized designs on each planet. And there was one relatively simple rule that was a very good match for rotorcraft, and kind of a reasonable match for fixed wing aircraft as well. And that was the rule that we've implemented here, which is to have a dummy mass that's equal to the battery weight. So no matter how you scale the size of the drone and the other the payload or other things that you have on it, basically the bigger and the heavier and the longer duration that the drone can stay aloft for, the larger the battery it needs. And having a dummy mass, something that does not provide any structure, doesn't provide any power, just a simple chunk of metal or something would probably do the job well. But anything that the teams like that is inert and doesn't provide any other function on the rover, that was a good way of making the performance equal for Mars and Earth. So that's where that rule came from.
Yeah, quite a bit of analysis really went into that, coming up with that rule. So there was some pretty good work that Darrel put in a number of years ago that helped inform how we'd simulate the general performance of a drone on Mars. So
yeah, that was back when designing drones was my day job.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I had the software to be able to do that. The designs were fairly aggressive on what we expected things to be able to do in future, but so they're maybe a little bit out of date at this point. But I suspect the rule is probably still close enough.
Yeah. All right, now we've been looking at text for a while, talking about the rules. Let's actually look at the conditions out at URC near MDRS. So this event takes place at the north site, which is about 1 kilometer north of the actual MDRS habitat itself, which we talked about in our last video when we had Kurt on talking about the extreme delivery mission. So a little further up the road, teams actually start the morning, or I guess they start their time at the north site, regardless of the time of the day they get there. They take on the equipment servicing mission first. And after they have a period of time in the equipment servicing mission, they have 10 minutes to get ready for this mission. Then they switch over almost immediately into the autonomous navigation mission. So here you can see some of the landscape that you can expect to see. This is a little bit earlier in some of the early gates, and where we have just the GPS or GNSS coordinates, where there isn't a visual marker to go for. So we will have a starting point. Teams will know the coordinates of their starting point, and it'll be the same measurement tool that we've used to plot all of our other points. We have used to plot our start point. So don't want to give too much away to teams, but do a little bit of critical thinking. And if you were measuring the start position differently than what we have told you the start position is, just keep in mind there may be differences in how different measuring systems and sensors are recording the data. There may be offsets or biases. Something to keep in mind. It may or may not be helpful if you know how to use that information out in the field. But here you can see a little bit more mild terrain where you're just trying to get from one point to another. Now, this was actually a pretty strategic decision that we made in the rules a couple of years ago, because we noticed that there were a lot of issues with GPS and navigation performance, and teams weren't focusing on what really is one of the most critical components for any unmanned or robotic vehicle. Having accurate navigation system, it's hard to stress the importance of that. So you can see some of the more mild terrain here.
I've lost count of how many times out at URC I've seen teams being given a a waypoint and they've headed off at 90 degrees to where they should be heading.
Yes,
So
yes.
that,
Make
that,
sure
that,
you
that
know
was
your coordinates, know generally how the numbers relate to each other. Please, teams, make sure that you understand how to convert between decimal and degree, minute, seconds. It says in the rules which ones we're going to give you. Make sure that your software is ready to work with those. But in general, you should know how to do the conversion between decimal and decimal degrees and degree, minute, seconds. Now here is where we're actually getting to some of the AR tags that Darrel was mentioning here. Again, we give you general coordinates. As you get further along and progress, those coordinates that we give you are increasingly inaccurate, which is really going to rely on your visual tracking capability.
Yeah, but basically, further along in that, we expect teams to have to do a pattern search to go find the waypoint. So
And here you can see where we start to introduce slightly more aggressive terrain, which for a human driver, this doesn't look like too terribly difficult to navigate, but we do pretty strategically ensure that a straight line between any two markers will find the steepest and most annoying ridge out there. It's a test for your systems to see how well they'll handle those obstacles. Here you can see one tag that is really right next to some aggressive terrain there. And in just a minute, we'll watch a video to see how the rover was able to handle a couple of these obstacles here. If you look closely in this image, don't know how well it's coming through in the video, but you can actually see the AR tag is tipped over on its side. Those poles are slightly flexible. They're meant to be knocked over, not desired. So please try not to break the course features. But if you do bump it, no penalty for that. Yeah, do your best with an autonomous vehicle.
Yeah,
All right, here
I
this
think we've
final
got
couple of shots.
spare. I think we've got spare rods and a drill
Yes.
to make a new post, but hopefully we
Yeah.
won't have too many being run over.
Yeah, and here is the final gate that Darrel was mentioning earlier, where there's two posts, and you have to be able to track both of them and successfully drive between them until your rear tires and the back end of the rover fully clear that line. So we'll stop the pictures there, and we'll see if we can pull up the video, get it to play. All right, so we're just going to look at about the last minute and a little more than a minute of this video here. It's probably going to come through a little choppy in the video recording, but it should give you the general idea. It's a little bit of shaking in the camera too. I was running across the desert while filming this last year. So this is from AGH Space Systems, one of our Polish competitors. They had probably the most impressive obstacle avoidance, certainly one of the most, if not the most impressive obstacle avoidance system. So everything that you see happening in this video is fully autonomous by the rover. It's sensing that one of those fairly steep inclines was directly in front of it. And you can see it trying a couple of different times before it eventually finds a passable route off to the side. You'll see it kind of make its way over. And then as it proceeds along, it identifies a few other things that it detects and recognizes as obstacles. Does a pretty good job of steering and maneuvering itself around those. So you can see a little bit of a rock outcropping that's just going to dart around there. And then make its way over to the tag pretty successfully. At this point, just at the end of the video there, you might have seen a light flashing on its rover. Just as a reminder to teams, you are required to have that visual indicator both on the rover itself as well as back in the command and control station, informing us that the rover believes it has reached its destination. So we will have one judge following the rover, another judge that will be back with the team in the command and control station, and both judges will verify that the signal has been sent, or the notification is popping up on the screen for the operators. The light is flashing on the rover, letting us know that the rover believes that it has reached its destination. At that point, if it's something that we have to measure to determine if it's truly within the right radius, we'll measure. If it's pretty obvious that it's definitely in, or you're definitely 20 meters away and you need to try again, we'll let teams know, and then they can either move on to the next gate, or they can try to go back and autonomously return to the previous gate and reattempt the current gate. All right, and I think the last thing that we're going to bring up for this video, I'm going to try to switch over to some of the questions and answers. And as a reminder, if you head over to our website at urc.motorsociety.org, I know I don't need to tell everybody that. When you head down the menu under requirements and guidelines, Q&A, it'll bring you here. You scroll down to the autonomous navigation mission questions. These are always important to go back and take another look at when you're in the final stages of preparing to come out to URC. I think a lot of teams look at these early in the year. Sometimes they forget to come back and see what new questions have been added recently. And it's also just a good chance to take a look at what some of the, there's always sections of the rules that can be interpreted different ways. And so there's where we try to give some of that clarity to teams there. So Darrel, from the Q&A, were there any notable ones that you wanted to highlight?
Let me see. I guess some of the more common questions were whether the order of the gates was as was given in the rules, and the answer there is yes. So when you turn up in the field, we will basically give you that list, that numbered list, and we will give you the coordinates for each of those. As mentioned earlier, for the AR tags, the GPS location will not be directly on top of the tag. It will be getting increasingly far away, basically to stretch your search capability and your AR tag recognition capability. So the first one will probably be pretty close, and you'll just need to get there and just show that you can move a short distance. Basically that the rover can detect the tag and drive to it. But that one will be relatively close. Probably won't need much more than kind of a look around. And then basically the last one is probably going to be a considerable distance, which will require a significant pattern search, and as you saw in the little video, may involve a little bit of terrain as well, requiring some or autonomous obstacle avoidance, or either that or a very capable rover that can manage to go up some of those little features that you saw in that little stream bed there. Let me see what else we got. The battery. I guess you mentioned this earlier. The battery and the dummy weight on the drone need to be removable. We are going to weigh these and check that they are the same, and then you can put them back on your vehicle. But obviously, if you've made it so that these are not removable from the vehicle, then we obviously can't check that.
And questions 5, 6, 7 here are really great to read for any of the teams that are bringing a drone, or even for teams that are considering how they might use a drone next year if we decide to keep that in the rules, which certainly we haven't had a chance to consider for future years. But a bit of detail in here on how teams should be prepared to transition between the rover and the drone.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a protocol with that. Teams have to formally switch between the two. So encourage those teams bringing a drone to read through these, make sure you're comfortable and familiar with the rules. And of course, whether it's for autonomous navigation mission or any of the missions or general flow of URC in general, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to email both myself and Darrel. You can find our email addresses on the URC contact info page. So with that, I think that's probably a good stopping point for this evening. So want to thank Darrel for joining me tonight to go through some of the basics for the autonomous navigation mission. Teams, good luck again as you continue your final testing. And we are looking forward to seeing teams out in Utah in just 2 short weeks from the day we're recording this video here on the 17th. So it's coming up quick. Good luck, teams. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we will catch you in the next couple days for another video.